She called me boring and left me. I didn't say a word. 1 year later.
Sorry, you're just not exciting enough. Those words still echo in my head, cutting deeper than any knife ever could. It's been a year since Emma said them to me, standing in our living room with her bags already packed. 12 years of marriage reduced to 7 cruel words. My name is Anthony. I'm 40 years old, and until last year I thought I had built a good life, a stable job as an accountant at a respectable firm, a modest but comfortable home that we'd spent years making our own, weekend barbecues with friends, movie nights on the couch. I thought it was enough. I thought I was enough. I was wrong. I've met someone, Emma had continued that night, her eyes not quite meeting mine. His name is Ryan. He's a travel blogger. A travel blogger. While I was calculating deductions and preparing tax returns, this Ryan character was apparently paragliding over the Andes and swimming with dolphins in Bali. While I was securing our financial future, he was securing my wife's heart with stories of exotic destinations and sunset photographs. We've been talking for a few months, she admitted. He makes me feel alive, Anthony. When was the last time we did something spontaneous? Something that made our hearts race? I stood there, frozen, trying to process her words. I wanted to remind her of the life we'd built together, the stability, the comfort, the home renovations we'd completed just 6 months earlier. I'd worked overtime for months to pay for the new kitchen she'd wanted so badly. You're a good man, Anthony, she added, as if that made her betrayal any easier to swallow. But I need more than good. I need excitement, adventure. Ryan's invited me to join him in Thailand next week. I'm going. I didn't say a word. What could I possibly say? That I'd cancel our retirement savings and take her to Thailand myself? That I'd quit my job and become a nomad, chasing sunsets and Instagram likes? That night, after she left, I sat alone in our kitchen, the kitchen I'd worked so hard to give her, and stared at the wall until morning. Our wedding photo still hung there, mocking me with its promises of forever. The following weeks were a blur of concerned friends and awkward conversations. Maybe you should try picking up a hobby, my sister suggested during one of her check-in calls. You know, something exciting. Even my closest friends seemed to secretly side with Emma. Marriage takes work, they'd say, while their eyes conveyed a different message. Maybe you should have been less boring. I saw the photos on social media a few weeks later. Emma and Ryan, tanned and glowing, on some beach in Thailand. Her smile was radiant in a way I hadn't seen in years. The caption read, "Finally living the life I was meant for." Each new post was like salt in the wound. Snorkeling in crystal-clear waters, street food adventures in Bangkok, sunset yoga on the beach, and always that smile that used to be mine. I threw myself into work, taking on extra clients, staying late at the office. At least numbers made sense. Numbers didn't wake up one day and decide you weren't exciting enough anymore. At night I'd come home to our empty house, now just my house, and wonder where I'd gone wrong. Had I been too cautious? Too predictable? Had I forgotten how to dream somewhere along the way? I never publicly badmouthed Emma. I didn't post angry rants or bitter reflections. I simply went quiet, deleted my social media accounts, stopped accepting dinner invitations, became invisible. Apparently, my specialty. You need to get back out there, my well-meaning friends would insist. The best revenge is living well. But I wasn't interested in revenge. I was interested in survival, in finding a way to wake up each morning in a house filled with memories and somehow keep breathing. And then one day, when I thought the pain couldn't cut any deeper, I received a text message from a number I didn't recognize. "Hey man, it's Jackson from college. I'm in town next weekend. Heard about what happened. Remember our old band days? Still play that guitar?" Little did I know that simple message was about to change everything. Walking into an empty house never gets easier. 6 months after Emma left, the silence still felt like a physical presence following me from room to room. I'd come home from another 10-hour workday, set my briefcase by the door, and feel the weight of absence pressing down on my shoulders. Our house, my house, had become a museum of what used to be. The kitchen where we'd cook Sunday brunches, the living room where we'd binge-watch shows, the bedroom where, well, you know. Every space held ghosts of a life I thought would last forever. "You should redecorate," my sister Melissa suggested during one of her check-ins. "Make the place yours." But the truth was, I didn't know what mine looked like anymore. For 12 years, everything had been ours. The messages of support had dwindled by then. The initial wave of "I'm so sorry" and "she doesn't deserve you" had receded, revealing what I feared was everyone's true thinking, that Emma had made the right choice. Mark, my best friend since high school, tried to be subtle about it. "Sometimes people just grow in different directions," he said over beers one night, his eyes not quite meeting mine. Emma always did have that adventurous streak. Translation: she outgrew you, you weren't enough. The worst came 3 months after she left. A work acquaintance, slightly drunk at a company happy hour, leaned in conspiratorially. "Between us," he slurred, "we all saw it coming. You and Emma. She always seemed to be looking for something more, you know?" I smiled tightly and excused myself to the bathroom, where I splashed cold water on my face and stared at my reflection. Was it that obvious to everyone but me? Had I been the only one who didn't see the chasm growing between us? That night, I found myself scrolling through Emma and Ryan's travel blog. The Untethered Two, they called themselves. How poetic. Their latest post was from the Amalfi Coast, a place Emma and I had always talked about visiting someday when we had enough saved, when the timing was right. Apparently, with Ryan, someday was now. The photos showed Emma laughing as she licked gelato from a cone, the Mediterranean sparkling behind her. Ryan's arm was draped casually around her shoulders. The caption read, "Life's too short to wait for someday." I closed my laptop and poured myself another whiskey. The irony wasn't lost on me. All those years of working overtime, of careful planning and saving, I'd done it to build a secure future for us, for her. I thought I was being responsible, a good husband. Instead, I'd been boring, predictable, not exciting enough. The next morning, while nursing a hangover, I discovered something even more painful. A mutual friend had innocently mentioned that Emma and Ryan's relationship had actually started months before she left, while I was working late nights to pay for our home renovation, the very renovation she had insisted we needed. "I'm sure they were just friends at first," the friend backpedaled, seeing my face. But we both knew better. I thought back to those months, how Emma had suddenly developed an interest in photography, how she'd started attending creative workshops on weekends, how naive I'd been. My mother called around this time, her voice careful. "Sometimes, Anthony, we need to look at our part in these things. Were you really present in your marriage?" Even my own mother seemed to think I deserved to be left. That weekend, I found myself in our garage, staring at the boxes of stuff I'd never unpacked after moving from our first apartment, college textbooks, old photo albums, and in the corner, gathering dust, my guitar case. I hadn't played since college, since before I'd decided that accounting was a more sensible career path than music. Emma hadn't even known I played. Why would she? I'd packed away that part of myself long before I met her, deeming it impractical, childish. I unlatched the case, half expecting the guitar to have disintegrated. But there it was, my old Fender Stratocaster, still intact despite years of neglect. I ran my fingers over the strings, grimacing at the out-of-tune twang. As I sat there on an overturned milk crate, slowly retuning each string, I felt something stir inside me, something I hadn't felt in a very long time. The next day, Jackson's text arrived like an answer to a question I hadn't known I was asking. "Hey man, it's Jackson from college. I'm in town next weekend, heard about what happened. Remember our old band days, still play that guitar?" I stared at the message for a long time, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Finally, I typed a simple response. "Still got the Strat. Been too long. Where and when?" Little did I know, that exchange would be the first step toward rediscovering the person I'd buried long ago, a person who, it turns out, wasn't so boring after all. The bar was dimly lit, one of those hole-in-the-wall places with peeling band posters and the lingering smell of beer and nostalgia. I stood outside for nearly 10 minutes, debating whether to go in or just text Jackson some excuse about work. But what was I rushing home to? An empty house and another microwave dinner? I pushed open the door, and the years seemed to melt away. Jackson looked almost the same, a bit more grey in his beard, lines around his eyes, but that same easy smile. He crushed me in a bear hug. "Man, it's good to see you," he said, clapping my back, "though I wish it were under better circumstances." I shrugged, uncomfortable with the sympathy. "It's been 6 months. I'm fine." Jackson's eyebrow raised slightly, but he didn't challenge me. Instead, he ordered us beers and started reminiscing about our college band, the Broken Strings. 4 accounting majors who thought they could be rock stars on the weekends. "Remember that gig at Murphy's?" he laughed. "When your string broke mid-solo and you didn't even stop playing?" I did remember. I remembered the rush, the applause, the feeling of being completely in the moment. Where had that Anthony gone? "I've got a regular thing going now," Jackson continued. "Nothing fancy. Thursday nights at the Cellar. Just covers. Some original stuff. Small crowd, but good people." I nodded, took another sip of beer. "We need a rhythm guitarist," he said casually. Too casually. "Our guy moved to Seattle last month." "Jackson?" "Just one night," he pressed. "Next Thursday. What else are you doing? Working late again?" The accusation stung because it was true. What else was I doing with my life? "I haven't played in years," I protested weakly. "Like riding a bike," he grinned. "I'll email you the set list. Nothing complicated, I promise." I should have said no. I had a major client review the following Friday. I needed to prepare to focus. Instead, I heard myself say one night, no promises after that. Jackson's smile was worth the anxiety that immediately flooded my system. When I got home that night, I opened the guitar case again. This time I picked up the instrument, feeling its weight against my body. Familiar, yet foreign, like greeting an old friend who's become a stranger. My fingers were clumsy at first, struggling to form chords that had once been second nature. But muscle memory is a powerful thing. By midnight, calluses forming on my fingertips, I was surprised to find myself smiling. The next week passed in a blur of spreadsheets by day and power chords by night. Jackson's set list was mercifully straightforward. Classic rock covers, songs we had played 100 times in college. With each practice session, something long dormant began to awaken in me. By Thursday, I was a bundle of nerves. I changed my shirt 3 times, feeling ridiculous. I was 40, not 20. This wasn't Madison Square Garden. It was a dive bar that probably held 50 people max. Yet when I walked into the Cellar, guitar case in hand, my heart was pounding like I was about to step on stage at a sold-out arena. Jackson introduced me to the others. Dave on drums, Mia on bass, Sophia on keyboard. They were welcoming, unfazed by my obvious anxiety. "First gig jitters," Mia nodded knowingly. "Just don't throw up on my pedal board and we're cool." The crowd was sparse at first, a few regulars at the bar, couples at corner tables. But as the night progressed, the place filled up. By our third song, people were actually dancing. And then something unexpected happened. During Born to Run, Jackson nodded at me, signaling it was time for my solo, a solo I hadn't played in nearly 20 years. For a moment, panic seized me. I couldn't do this. I was an accountant, for God's sake. Not a guitarist, not anymore. But my fingers seemed to have ideas of their own. They moved across the fretboard with growing confidence, finding notes I didn't consciously remember. The crowd responded, a few people actually cheering. In that moment, sweat dripping down my back, under the warm glow of stage lights, I felt something I hadn't felt since Emma left. Since before Emma left, if I'm being honest. I felt alive. After the show, as we packed up our equipment, Jackson nudged my shoulder. "So, same time next week?" I should have hesitated, should have mentioned the work piling up on my desk, the responsible adult reasons why this couldn't become a regular thing. Instead, I said, "I'll be here." Walking to my car that night, guitar case in hand, I realized I was humming. Actually humming. When was the last time I'd done that? My phone buzzed with a notification. Someone had tagged me in a post. Curious, I opened it to find photos from tonight's show. There I was on stage, caught mid-solo, a look of intense concentration on my face. But what struck me most was that I didn't look like an accountant pretending to be a musician. I looked like me, a version of me I'd forgotten existed. I scrolled through the comments, surprised to see several people asking who the new guitarist was and complimenting the performance. For the first time in months, I fell asleep without thinking about Emma, without wondering where I'd gone wrong. Instead, my mind was filled with chord progressions and the possibility of next Thursday night. One Thursday night turned into 2, then 4, then suddenly it was a standing engagement. Every week I'd leave the office at exactly 6:30, guitar case in hand, a quiet thrill building as I headed to the cellar. My colleagues noticed the change first. "You're different lately," my assistant remarked one afternoon. "More present." I hadn't realized how much I'd been sleepwalking through life until I started waking up. Jackson pushed me to try more complex pieces, to take longer solos. "You're holding back," he'd say during rehearsals. "Let go, man. That's what music is about." Letting go. Such a simple concept, yet so foreign to a man who'd built his entire identity around control and stability. But on stage, something shifted. The moment the lights dimmed and the first chord struck, I became someone else, someone freer, bolder, more authentic. 3 months in, Jackson threw me a curveball. "We should try one of your songs next week," he suggested casually during a break. I nearly choked on my water. "My songs? Don't play dumb," he laughed. "I saw you scribbling in that notebook last week. You're writing again, aren't you?" I was. Late at night, when the house was quiet and the day's numbers had finally stopped scrolling through my head, I'd found myself picking up a pen. At first, just fragments, phrases, feelings, nothing coherent, but gradually those fragments became verses, those verses became songs. "They're not ready," I protested. Jackson shrugged. "Music's never ready. It's alive, it evolves. That's the beauty of it." The thought of performing my own material terrified me. These weren't cover songs I could hide behind. These were my words, my emotions laid bare. What if people hated them? What if they saw through me? But the seed was planted. That night I pulled out my notebook and really looked at what I'd created. Songs about loss, yes, but also about rediscovery, about stepping out of shadows, about finding your voice again. The following Wednesday, heart-pounding, I brought one song to rehearsal. "It's rough," I warned as I handed out chord charts to the band. They studied them thoughtfully. Mia was the first to speak. "This is good, Anthony. Really good." We ran through it once, then again. With each repetition, the song transformed, the band adding textures and dynamics I hadn't envisioned. "What's it called?" Sophia asked when we finished. I hesitated. "Invisible Man." Jackson nodded slowly. "Perfect." Thursday night arrived, and the cellar was packed. Word had spread about our little band. We played our usual set, the crowd responding enthusiastically. Then, after a brief pause, Jackson stepped up to the microphone. "We've got something special tonight," he announced, "a debut performance of an original song by our very own Anthony Miller." My mouth went dry. The lights seemed suddenly too bright, the room too crowded. I could still back out, suggest another cover instead. But then I looked at Jackson, at Mia and Sophia and Dave, all watching me with encouraging smiles. I thought about the man I'd been 6 months ago, hollow, defeated, lost. I stepped up to the microphone. "This is called Invisible Man," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "It's about disappearing and finding your way back." The first chord resonated through the room, and then I was singing, words that had poured out of me late one night, words about a man who had slowly erased himself until there was nothing left but a reflection in other people's expectations. My voice wavered at first, but grew stronger with each verse. By the chorus, something strange was happening. People were listening, really listening. A few were nodding, as if the words had touched something in them too. When the final note faded, there was a moment of silence, a moment that stretched into eternity in my mind. Then, applause. Not polite, perfunctory applause, but genuine, enthusiastic appreciation. Jackson caught my eye, his face split in a wide grin. "Told you," he mouthed. After the show, something even more unexpected happened. People approached me, not just to say, "Great set" or "Nice playing," but to talk about the song, about how it resonated with them. A middle-aged woman with kind eyes told me it made her think about her own life, how she'd lost touch with passions she once had. "You should record that," a young guy in a leather jacket insisted, pressing a business card into my hand. "My buddy runs a small studio, nothing fancy, but he does good work." I stared at the card, stunned. Record my music? The thought had never even occurred to me. That night, driving home, I felt a strange lightness. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I was excited about tomorrow, about possibilities, about a future that suddenly seemed wider, more colorful than the narrow path I'd resigned myself to. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. It was Mia. "Sorry to call so late," she said without preamble, "but I had an idea. My cousin manages this indie festival in the park next month. It's nothing huge, but decent exposure. I sent him a video of tonight. He wants us to play a short set. A festival, with real bands, professional musicians. He specifically mentioned your song," she added when I didn't immediately respond. "Said it had something special. I don't know what to say." "Say yes, you idiot," she laughed. "This is how it starts." How what starts? I wanted to ask. But I knew. This was how you rebuild a life. Not all at once, but piece by piece, note by note. "Yes," I said finally. "Tell him yes." I didn't know then how that simple word would change everything. How saying yes to a small festival would lead to a moment I couldn't yet imagine, a moment when I would look out into a larger crowd and see a face I once knew better than my own. The Harborside Music Festival wasn't Madison Square Garden, but it felt monumental to me. 20 local bands on 3 stages, spread across the waterfront park over a weekend in late summer. Our slot was Saturday afternoon. Not prime time, but not the worst either. In the month leading up to it, we rehearsed relentlessly. My living room, once a mausoleum of failed marriage, became band headquarters. Takeout containers and coffee cups littered my coffee table. Guitar cases leaned against walls. My pristine hardwood floors were scuffed from moving equipment. And I loved every mark, every stain, every sign that life was happening here again. Jackson convinced me to include 3 of my original songs in our set. "People connect with authenticity," he insisted. "Your covers are great, but your songs have soul." Soul. I'd spent so many years being careful, calculated, responsible. I'd forgotten I even had one. The morning of the festival, I woke with my stomach in knots. What was I doing? I was an accountant, not a musician. I had clients depending on me, tax deadlines looming. This fantasy life, this second chance at a road not taken, it couldn't last. "You're overthinking again," Mia said when I arrived at the park, guitar case gripped so tightly my knuckles were white. She could read the doubt on my face. "Stop it. We've got this." And somehow we did. Despite my nerves, despite the much larger crowd than we were used to, something clicked when we took the stage. The afternoon sun was warm on my face, the breeze carrying our sound across the park. I closed my eyes during my solos, letting the music take me somewhere else, somewhere beyond spreadsheets and reasonable expectations and the ghost of a failed marriage. We were halfway through our set when I opened my eyes during Invisible Man and saw her, Emma. She was standing near the back of the crowd, sunglasses perched on top of her head, wearing a sundress I didn't recognize. For a moment I thought I was hallucinating, conjuring her from the lyrics about disappearing and reappearing, but she was real, and she wasn't alone. Ryan stood beside her, his arm draped casually around her shoulders, looking exactly like the Instagram-ready adventurer I'd imagined. My fingers faltered momentarily on the strings, the note bending awkwardly. Jackson shot me a concerned glance, but I recovered quickly, forcing my attention back to the music, to the moment. When the song ended, I dared to look again. She was still there, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read, surprise mixed with something else, confusion, regret. We finished our set to enthusiastic applause. As we left the stage, my hands trembled slightly as I disconnected my guitar. "You all right?" Sophia asked, helping me coil cables. "You went somewhere else for a minute there." I nodded, not trusting my voice. Over her shoulder, I could see Emma and Ryan making their way toward the backstage area. "Anthony." Her voice was exactly as I remembered. I turned slowly, fighting to keep my expression neutral. "Emma," I said, "this is unexpected." She smiled, that same smile that used to light up my world. "I didn't know you were playing today. We just got back from Costa Rica yesterday, and Ryan's sister suggested we check out the festival." Ryan extended his hand. "Great set, man. That original stuff is solid." I shook his hand automatically, struck by how surreal this moment was. He was younger than I'd expected, early 30s maybe, with the casual confidence of someone who's never doubted his life choices. Tan, fit, with artfully tousled hair and an easy smile. Everything I wasn't. "Thanks," I managed. "How long have you been playing?" he asked. "Emma never mentioned you were a musician." I caught the slight widening of Emma's eyes, the faint color rising in her cheeks. "I picked it up recently," I said, the half-truth rolling easily off my tongue. No need to explain that I'd buried this part of myself long before I met her, thinking it childish, impractical, thinking I needed to be someone else to be worthy. "Well, you're really good," he said, and the genuine admiration in his voice made it impossible to hate him. An awkward silence fell. Jackson, sensing the tension, appeared at my side. "We need to clear our equipment for the next band," he said, giving Emma and Ryan a pointed look. Emma nodded. "Of course. It was nice to see you, Anthony." She hesitated, then added, "You seem different." Different. Such a simple word for the seismic shift inside me. "I am," I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. As they walked away, I felt Jackson's hand on my shoulder. "Ex-wife?" I nodded. "You okay?" I considered the question. Was I okay? Seeing Emma had been a shock, certainly, but the devastation I'd expected, the reopening of old wounds, it hadn't happened. Instead, I felt strangely calm, as if I'd finally closed a chapter that had remained unfinished. "Yeah," I said, realizing it was true. "I'm okay." Later, as we packed our equipment into Jackson's van, Mia nudged me. "So, that was her, the one who said you weren't exciting enough." I winced. Had I really told them that embarrassing detail? Mia laughed at my expression. "Well, she looked pretty damn surprised today. Guess she didn't expect boring Anthony to be rocking out on stage." No, she hadn't. And truthfully, neither had I. That night, as the festival wound down, our band gathered at a nearby pub to celebrate. The first round was on Jackson, who raised his glass in a toast. "To new beginnings," he said, eyeing me meaningfully, "and to showing up when it counts." I clinked my glass against his, thinking about Emma's face in the crowd, not with bitterness, not anymore, but with a strange sense of gratitude. If she hadn't left, would I ever have found my way back to music, to myself? As the night deepened and the conversations flowed, my phone buzzed with a notification, a message from an unknown number. "You were amazing today. I always knew there was more to you than met the eye. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. Emma." I stared at the screen, a complex mix of emotions washing over me. 6 months ago, these words would have meant everything to me. Now, they were just words from someone who no longer had the power to define my worth. I didn't respond to Emma's text that night, or the next day, or the day after that. Not out of spite or bitterness, but because I genuinely didn't know what to say. What do you say to someone who once defined your entire world, but now feels like a distant memory? Life continued its new rhythm. Accountant by day, musician by night. The festival had opened doors. Smaller venues around the city began reaching out, offering us weekend slots. Our social media following grew steadily. Someone created a website for us. 3 weeks after the festival, Emma texted again. "Coffee sometime? Just to talk." This time, after a day of consideration, I replied, "Sure, when works for you?" We met at a neutral location, not our old haunts, but a new cafe downtown. She was already seated when I arrived, 2 cups on the table. She remembered how I took my coffee. "You look good," she said as I sat down. "Happy?" I nodded. "I am." An awkward silence stretched between us, filled with unspoken questions. Finally, she took a deep breath. "Ryan and I broke up." The words hung in the air. 6 months ago, they would have sent my heart soaring. Now they simply existed as information, neither thrilling nor devastating. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and meant it. She traced the rim of her cup with her finger. "Turns out the exciting life isn't so exciting when it's all there is. No roots, no stability." She looked up, meeting my eyes. "No substance." I stayed silent, waiting for her to continue. "Seeing you at the festival," she shook her head slightly. "It made me realize something. You weren't boring, Anthony. You were steady, reliable. I mistook that for boring because I was restless." Another silence, heavier this time. "I made a mistake," she said finally. "I know it's been a year and you've moved on, I can see that. But I had to tell you, I'm sorry. For how I ended things. For what I said." I considered her words carefully, feeling the weight of them. There was a time when this apology would have been everything to me, when I would have grabbed it with both hands, desperate for another chance. "Thank you for saying that," I said instead. "It means something." Hope flickered in her eyes. "Does it mean... could we..." I knew what she was asking. Could we try again? Could we rebuild what we had? The question deserved an honest answer, not a hasty one born of lingering bitterness, nor a desperate one born of lingering attachment, just truth. "Emma," I said gently, "what we had, it's gone, and I don't think either of us should want it back." Her face fell slightly, but she nodded. "Because I hurt you too badly?" "No," I shook my head. "Because we weren't right for each other. You needed someone who challenged you to explore. I needed someone who valued the life I was building. We were pulling in different directions long before Ryan came along." "And now?" she asked. "What direction are you pulling in now?" I smiled, thinking of the band, of the songs flowing from me like water lately, of the quiet joy I'd found in rediscovering parts of myself I'd buried long ago. "I'm not sure yet," I admitted, "but I'm enjoying figuring it out." We talked for another hour, not as ex-spouses trying to reconcile, but as two people who had once shared a life, catching up. There was sadness there, certainly. 12 years couldn't be erased or forgotten. But there was also a surprising lightness, a freedom in acknowledging that our paths had diverged for a reason. As we said goodbye outside the cafe, Emma hugged me, a friendly embrace, not a desperate one. "I'm glad you found your music again," she said. "You're really good, you know." "Thanks," I replied. "I'm glad you found what you were looking for too, even if it wasn't what you expected." She smiled ruefully. "Still working on that part, but I'll get there." I watched her walk away, feeling a sense of closure that had eluded me for so long, not because she'd apologized, not because she'd validated my worth, but because I no longer needed either of those things from her. 6 months later, life looked nothing like I'd imagined it would a year ago. I'd scaled back my accounting hours to part-time. Our band, now calling ourselves The Revival, had recorded an EP that was gaining traction on local radio. We weren't quitting our day jobs anytime soon, but we were building something real, something meaningful, and I'd met someone, Claire, a high school music teacher who came to our shows regularly. She was different from Emma in every way that mattered. She valued stability but craved creativity too. She understood the part of me that needed to build a secure life, and the part that needed artistic expression. With her, I didn't feel split in two, trying to be the responsible adult while suppressing the dreamer. One night, after a particularly good show, Claire and I were sitting at the bar when Jackson slid onto the stool beside me. "You won't believe who just walked in," he said, nodding toward the door. Emma stood there, hand in hand with a man I didn't recognize. Our eyes met across the room, and she smiled, a genuine smile without expectation or regret. I nodded in acknowledgement, and she nodded back before turning her attention to her companion. "You okay?" Claire asked, noticing the exchange. I looked at her, really looked at her, taking in the warmth in her eyes, the easy way she fit into my life, into both sides of my life. "More than okay," I said, squeezing her hand. Later that night, as we packed up after the show, I caught a glimpse of myself in the tarnished mirror behind the bar. I looked different than I had a year ago, more relaxed, more present, more alive. "Not boring at all," I murmured to my reflection. Jackson appeared behind me, guitar cases in hand. "What's that?" I shook my head, smiling. "Nothing. Just talking to an old friend." As we stepped out into the cool night air, I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. Emma's leaving had shattered the life I thought I wanted, the person I thought I needed to be. In those broken pieces, I'd found something unexpected. Not just music, not just new love, but myself. Sometimes you have to get lost to find your way back. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you leads you to the best version of yourself, and sometimes being told you're not exciting enough is exactly the wake-up call you need to remember just how exciting you truly are.